The story of the penny begins long before the coin itself was first struck. In ancient Britain, before the Romans arrived, trade was often conducted through barter. People would exchange goods and services directly, without using money. For larger transactions, they might have used items with a recognized value, like iron bars or rings. When the Romans conquered Britain in 43 AD, they brought their own sophisticated monetary system with them. Coins like the silver denarius and the bronze as became common. This introduced the very idea of a standardized portable unit of currency to the island, laying the essential groundwork for what would eventually come. After the Romans left Britain in the early 5th century, the economy largely reverted to a non-monetary system. The invading Anglo-Saxon tribes brought their own customs, but initially they did not have a tradition of coinage. For several centuries, wealth was measured in land, livestock, and loyalty. However, as small kingdoms formed and trade with continental Europe grew, the need for a practical currency re-emerged. Early Anglo-Saxon kings began to issue their own coins, often imitating Roman or Frankish designs. These first coins were small, rare, and made of gold or a debased silver called electrum. They were known as sciatus and thrimsas, and were the direct ancestors of the English penny. These early scitas were not called pennies, but they served a similar function. They were small, silver coins that facilitated local and international trade. Their designs were incredibly varied, featuring everything from abstract patterns and mythical beasts to crude portraits of unknown rulers. This lack of standardization reflected the fragmented political landscape of the time, with many different local chieftains and kings issuing their own currency. The weight and silver purity of these coins could also vary significantly, making large transactions a complicated affair. It was clear that a more uniform and reliable coin was needed to unify the emerging English kingdoms economically. The word penny itself has Germanic origins, likely derived from words like the Old English penig or pening, which may have originally meant pledge or token. The term began to be associated with a specific type of silver coin that was gaining popularity across Northern Europe. The stage was set for a revolutionary change in English currency. A strong and ambitious king would soon see the power of a single standardized coin. This new coin would not only simplify trade but also serve as a powerful symbol of royal authority, a piece of propaganda that could travel to every corner of the kingdom, heralding a new era of English identity. The true English penny was born in the late 8th century under the rule of King Offa of Mercia, one of the most powerful Anglo-Saxon kings. Seeking to emulate the great European rulers like Charlemagne, Offa introduced a broad, thin silver coin around the year 785 AD. This new coin was a dramatic improvement over the smaller, thicker sciatas that came before it. It was made of high-quality silver and weighed about 1.5 grams. Crucially, it bore the king's name, Offa Rex, and a portrait, clearly stating who held the authority behind the currency. This act established a vital principle: the monarch guaranteed the coin's value. The design of Offa's penny was revolutionary for its time and set the standard for centuries to come. The obverse, or head's side, featured a portrait of the king, a powerful symbol of his rule. The reverse, or tails side, typically named the moneyer, the skilled craftsman responsible for striking the coin. This system of naming the moneyer was a clever form of quality control. If a coin was found to be underweight or made of impure silver, the moneyer responsible could be identified and severely punished. This ensured public confidence in the currency, making the silver penny the backbone of the Anglo-Saxon economy for nearly 500 years. Following Offa, subsequent Anglo-Saxon and Viking kings continued to issue silver pennies. Each monarch would introduce new designs, often with their own portrait and titles. Some of the most famous and beautiful pennies from this period were the quatrefoil and helmet types issued by Knut the Great. These coins were struck at mints located in major towns all across England, from London and Canterbury to York and Lincoln. The existence of so many mints demonstrates how widespread the use of the penny had become. It was used to pay taxes, hire soldiers, buy land and conduct everyday trade, becoming an essential part of life for merchants, landowners, and even some peasants. One of the most remarkable features of the Anglo-Saxon penny was its consistency in weight and silver content. For hundreds of years, it remained a reliable and trusted currency, not just in England but across Europe, where it was known as the sterling. This term, which we still use for British currency today, is believed to derive from the Old English word storling, meaning little star, possibly referring to a small star that appeared on some early Norman pennies. The silver penny was so valuable that for small purchases, it was often physically cut into halves or quarters, creating halfpennies and farthings, or fourthings. This simple practice made the high-value silver penny usable for smaller, everyday transactions. After the Norman conquest in 1066, William the Conqueror and his successors continued the tradition of the silver penny. They understood the importance of a stable currency for controlling their new kingdom and collecting taxes effectively. The design, however, changed. The early Norman pennies often featured a forward-facing portrait of the king, a departure from the side-profile portraits of the late Anglo-Saxon period. This full-face portrait style would become a dominant feature of English coins for the next 200 years. The reverse of the coin was also updated, most famously with the cross and pellets design, which made it easier to cut the coin accurately into halves and quarters. Throughout the medieval period, the silver penny remained the primary coin in circulation. Its design was periodically updated, usually upon the accession of a new monarch, but its fundamental nature remained the same. A significant reform occurred during the reign of King Edward I in 1279. He initiated a major recoinage to replace all the old worn-out coins with a new standardized issue. These new pennies were of a consistent weight and featured a new, highly realistic portrait of the king. Millions of these long cross pennies were struck at mints in London, Canterbury, Bristol, and York, creating a unified currency that greatly benefited the growing English economy and international trade. The Tudor period, beginning with Henry VII in 1485, brought significant artistic and political changes that were reflected in the penny. Henry VII introduced a more lifelike and regal portrait on his coins, moving away from the generic representations of earlier monarchs. Under his son, Henry VIII, the coinage underwent a more dramatic transformation. Famous for his lavish spending and costly wars, Henry VIII desperately needed to raise money. He did this through an infamous policy known as the Great Debasement between 1544 and 1551. He ordered the mints to reduce the amount of precious metal in the coins, mixing the silver with increasing amounts of cheap copper. These debased pennies had a much lower silver content, and as they wore down in circulation, the copper would begin to show through, especially on the high point of the portrait, the king's nose. This earned Henry VIII the unflattering nickname, Old Copper Nose. The public quickly lost faith in the currency, leading to rampant inflation and economic chaos. It was a stark lesson in the importance of maintaining the integrity of the coinage. His successors, Edward VI and Queen Elizabeth I, had to undertake the difficult and expensive task of recalling all the debased coins and restoring the currency to its former high silver standard, a process that finally solidified the public's trust in the monarchy's money. The 17th century marked the beginning of the end for the silver penny as a circulating coin. By the reign of the Stuart king, Charles II, silver had become increasingly valuable. The tiny silver pennies being produced were small, easy to lose, and inconvenient for everyday transactions. People needed a less valuable coin for small purchases. As a result, for the first time in English history, the Royal Mint began to issue official pennies made from a base metal. In 1672, the first copper penny was struck alongside a copper halfpenny. These coins were much larger and heavier than their silver predecessors, giving them a satisfying and substantial feel. The design of this new copper currency was symbolic of a changing Britain. The obverse of Charles II's copper penny featured a classical Roman-style portrait of the king looking to the right. The reverse, however, introduced a new and enduring national symbol, Britannia. This female figure, seated on a rock with a shield and trident, was intended to represent Britain's growing strength as a maritime and naval power. The figure of Britannia was said to have been modelled on Frances Stuart, Duchess of Richmond, a celebrated court beauty. This iconic design would grace the reverse of the penny for over 300 years, becoming synonymous with the coin itself. The production of copper pennies was sporadic throughout the late Stuart and early Georgian periods. Mints struggled to produce them profitably, and for long stretches, no new pennies were issued at all. This led to a severe shortage of small change, forcing merchants to issue their own private tokens. The problem became critical during the Industrial Revolution in the late 18th century. Factories needed vast quantities of low-value coins to pay their workers weekly wages. In response to this crisis, the government commissioned the Soho Mint in Birmingham, run by the brilliant industrialist Matthew Boulton, to produce a new generation of copper coins using steam-powered presses. In 1797, Boulton produced one of the most famous coins in British history, the cartwheel penny. These magnificent coins were struck under the authority of King George III and were the first pennies to be made by steam-powered machinery. They were enormous, weighing exactly 1 ounce of copper with a thick, raised rim designed to prevent wear and counterfeiting. Their impressive size and weight meant that their intrinsic metal value was very close to their face value of 1 penny. Although their large size made them cumbersome, they were produced in vast quantities and finally solved the nation's chronic shortage of small change, paving the way for the modern, machine-made pennies of the future. The reign of Queen Victoria from 1837 to 1901 was really the golden age of the penny. During this long period of industrial growth, colonial expansion, and national confidence, the penny became a true symbol of Britain. The first Victorian pennies continued the copper tradition established in the Georgian era. They featured a beautiful portrait of the young queen, known as the Young Head portrait, designed by William Wyon. These large copper pennies were a familiar part of daily life, used for everything from buying a loaf of bread to paying for a newspaper. They were heavy, durable, and circulated throughout the vast British Empire from Canada to Australia. A major change occurred in 1860. Copper was becoming more expensive, and the large pennies were, heavy and inconvenient to carry in large numbers. The Royal Mint decided to switch to a new alloy, bronze. Bronze made of 95% copper, 4% tin, and 1% zinc was harder, more durable, and cheaper than pure copper. This allowed the new pennies to be made significantly smaller and lighter, even though they kept the same face value. This new, more convenient bronze penny was quickly accepted by the public. The transition marked a fundamental shift, as the coin's value was now purely symbolic, no longer tied to the weight of its metal content. The new bronze pennies introduced a new portrait of Queen Victoria, often called the bun head due to her hairstyle. This elegant design was created by Leonard Charles Wyon, the son of William Wyon. The reverse continued to feature the classic image of Britannia, but she was updated with a lighthouse in the background and a ship at sea, celebrating Britain's maritime dominance. These coins were produced in enormous quantities to meet the demands of a booming population and economy. They became so ubiquitous that they are often the first old coin that collectors in the UK find, a tangible link to the Victorian past. In the later years of her reign, as the Queen aged, the coinage portrait was updated to reflect her appearance. In 1895, a new portrait was introduced, known as the Old Head or Veiled Head, designed by Sir Thomas Brock. This mature, realistic portrait showed the Queen as a stately monarch, wearing a veil and crown. This final Victorian penny design circulated until her death in 1901. For generations of people, the penny was inextricably linked with the image of Queen Victoria. It was a constant presence in their pockets, a daily reminder of the long-reigning monarch and the powerful empire she represented. When Queen Victoria's son, Edward VII, came to the throne in 1901, the penny received its first new monarch's portrait in over 60 years. Following a tradition dating back to the 17th century, Edward's portrait faced the opposite direction to his predecessors. Since Victoria faced left, Edward's portrait, designed by George William de Saulles, faced to the right. This new penny retained the familiar bronze composition and the classic Britannia reverse, providing a sense of continuity for the public. However, some early pennies of Edward VII from 1902 are known for having a low tide or high tide variation, where the sea level around Britannia appears higher or lower, a minor detail cherished by collectors. The reign of his successor, George V, from 1910 to 1936, saw the penny through the tumultuous years of the First World War and the Great Depression. The portrait of the king, designed by Sir Bertram Mackennal, again faced the opposite direction, to the left. During this period, the Royal Mint sometimes struggled to obtain all the raw materials needed for coinage. In the 1920s, the Mint experimented with a different bronze alloy, which resulted in some pennies having a brighter, more golden appearance when new. A famous rarity from this era is the 1933 George V penny. The Royal Mint had a large stock of pennies and did not plan to issue any for circulation that year. However, a very small number, believed to be just 7, were struck for ceremonial and record-keeping purposes, making the 1933 penny one of the most legendary and valuable British coins. The short reign of Edward VIII in 1936 produced another great coinage rarity. Preparations were made for a new issue of coins, and a portrait of the new king was designed by Humphrey Paget. Edward VIII, however, broke with the tradition of alternating the direction of the monarch's portrait. He insisted that his portrait face left, the same direction as his father, because he preferred his left-facing profile. Pattern coins were struck, but before they could be issued for circulation, Edward abdicated the throne to marry Wallis Simpson. As a result, no pennies of Edward VIII ever entered circulation, and the few pattern pieces that exist are exceedingly rare and valuable. His brother, George VI, became king, and his coins, with a left-facing portrait by Humphrey Paget, were issued from 1937. The design of the penny remained largely unchanged, though the Britannia reverse was slightly modified by the artist Charles Walter Cozens. One interesting story from this era involves the penny's temporary retirement. In 1941, 1942, and 1943, during the height of the Second World War, no pennies were issued for circulation in the UK, although some were struck for the colonies. Production resumed in 1944. The last penny to feature the iconic Britannia design was struck in 1967, bringing a 300-year-old tradition to a close as Britain prepared for a monumental change to its currency system. The 1960s was a decade of profound social and technological change in Britain, and the nation's ancient currency system was seen as increasingly outdated and inefficient. The traditional system, with its pounds, shillings and pence, often called SD, was, honestly, quite complex. There were 12 pence in a shilling and 20 shillings in a pound, meaning there were 240 pence in a pound. This made calculations difficult, especially compared to the simpler decimal systems used by most other countries. In 1966, the government formally decided to switch to a decimal currency system where the pound would be divided into 100 new pence. This decision would completely transform the penny. To prepare the public for this massive change, a huge publicity campaign was launched. The new decimal coins, including the 1 penny piece, were designed and introduced to the public years before the official changeover day, known as Decimal Day. The old, large bronze pennies were phased out, and the last ones intended for circulation were dated 1967. The new decimal penny was first struck in 1968, but it was dated 1971 and was not released into circulation until Decimal Day itself. These new coins were initially issued in special souvenir packs, so people could become familiar with their size, weight, and feel. On February the 15th, 1971, Decimal Day, the new system officially took effect. The new decimal penny, or 1p, was worth 2.4 of the old pennies. It was a much smaller and lighter coin, made of the same bronze alloy as its predecessor. The obverse featured a new portrait of Queen Elizabeth II by Arnold Machin, which would become one of the most recognizable coin portraits in the world. The reverse, however, was completely new. The historic figure of Britannia was replaced with a design by Christopher Ironside, featuring a crowned portcullis with chains. A portcullis was a symbol of Parliament, and the design was adapted from the badge of Henry VII. For several years after Decimal Day, the new coins bore the inscription "New Penny" to distinguish them from the old currency. This was a crucial part of the transition, helping people to avoid confusion as the old shillings and florins remained in circulation for a time, alongside the new 5p and 10p coins. By 1982, the new system was so well established that the word "new" was no longer necessary. The inscription on the reverse was changed from "New Penny" to "1 penny." This small change marked the official end of the decimal transition period. The penny had been successfully reinvented for the modern age, but its evolution was not yet over. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, the 1 penny coin was a familiar part of everyday life. Its design remained stable, featuring the Arnold Machin portrait of the Queen on the obverse and Christopher Ironside's portcullis on the reverse. However, by the early 1990s, the rising price of copper and other metals meant that the intrinsic value of the bronze in the coin was getting close to, and sometimes even exceeded, its face value of 1 penny. This made the coins expensive for the Royal Mint to produce. It also created a risk that people might melt the coins down for their scrap metal value, which is, of course, illegal. To solve this problem, the Royal Mint made a significant change to the penny's composition in 1992. The solid bronze alloy was replaced with a copper-plated steel core. This new method involved taking a blank disc made of steel and coating it with a thin layer of copper. This gave the coin the same reddish appearance and size as the bronze version, but it was much cheaper to produce. These new steel pennies are magnetic, which is an easy way to distinguish them from the older, non-magnetic bronze ones. This change allowed the Royal Mint to continue producing the penny economically, ensuring its survival as the lowest denomination coin in circulation. Over the years, the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the penny has been updated to reflect her advancing age. In 1985, the Machin portrait was replaced by a new one designed by Raphael Maklouf. Then, in 1998, a new, more mature portrait by Ian Rank Broadley was introduced. This portrait was notable for its realism and was used on all UK circulating coins until 2015. Each change in the monarch's portrait marks a new chapter in the penny's long history, connecting the humble coin directly to the continuity of the monarchy itself. The penny in your pocket could feature any one of these different portraits depending on its year of issue. In 2008, the penny received its most dramatic redesign in 40 years. To celebrate the heritage of British coinage, the Royal Mint launched a competition to create new reverse designs for all the circulating coins, from the 1p to the £1. The winning concept, by Matthew Dent, used the coins like a puzzle. Each of the smaller coins, the 1p, 2p, 5p, 10p, 20p, and 50p, showed a small section of the Royal Shield of Arms. When placed together in the correct arrangement, they form the complete shield. The penny features the lower left section of the shield, showing parts of the Lions of England and the Harp of Ireland. This clever and interactive design brought a fresh, modern look to the penny. In 2023, following the accession of King Charles III, a new penny was unveiled featuring a portrait of the new king and a design of a dormouse on the reverse, symbolizing nature and conservation. As of today, December the 22nd, 2025, the penny remains the lowest denomination coin in the United Kingdom, but its future is a topic of frequent debate. With inflation having eroded its purchasing power over the decades, the one penny coin buys very little on its own. Many everyday transactions are now rounded to the nearest 5 or 10 pence, and the increasing use of contactless card payments and digital wallets means that people are carrying less cash than ever before. This has led some economists and commentators to question whether the penny is still necessary. They argue that the cost of minting and distributing the coin outweighs its practical utility. Several countries with similar currency systems, such as Canada, Australia, and Ireland, have already withdrawn their lowest denomination coins from circulation. In those countries, cash transactions are now rounded to the nearest 5 cents. Proponents of this approach in the UK argue that it would simplify transactions, reduce costs for the Royal Mint, and have a negligible impact on inflation. They point to the fact that millions of pennies are struck each year only for many of them to be immediately dropped into piggy banks, charity boxes, or jam jars at home, effectively taking them out of active circulation. Despite these practical arguments, there is a strong sentimental attachment to the penny in Britain. Its history stretches back over 1,200 years, making it a powerful link to the nation's past. For many, the idea of abolishing it feels like letting go of a piece of British heritage. Charities also express concern as they receive a significant amount of their public donations from the collection of pennies and other small change. The phrase "every penny counts" is deeply ingrained in the culture, and many people feel that the humble penny still has a role to play, even if it is just as a tool for precise accounting and charitable giving. For now, the penny endures. The Royal Mint continues to strike them now, bearing the portrait of King Charles III and a new nature-inspired design. It has evolved from a valuable silver coin capable of buying a dozen chickens into a copper-plated steel token with minimal purchasing power. Yet it remains a constant in British life. It is the coin we use to teach children about money, the one we toss into fountains for good luck, and a symbol of starting small. Whether it survives for another decade or another century, the penny's incredible journey from the court of King Offa to the digital age has secured its place as one of the most significant and long-lasting coins in world history.